Alright, so let's continue our discussion of the Pray for Death standalone adventure for Pathfinder 2nd Edition Remastered. Before I dive into this, as always, there are a few disclaimers and general notes to share. First, obviously, I'm going to be spoiling everything about this adventure, and this is a very story and lore heavy adventure. It ties into the Godsrain Prophecies, and I'm going to be spoiling all of that. However, I will be starting that heavy spoiler material a little bit into the video. Before I get into that, I'll be handling some general thoughts and observations, and I will give you one last spoiler warning before I get into the heavy stuff. But again, just be aware that there are going to be spoilers in this video. Second, this is obviously part 2 of 2, so if you have not watched the part 1 video, I highly recommend that you go watch that. And also, I want to make sure that everybody knows that I have received these materials from Paizo, and I have not had a chance to play this adventure yet. I'm up to my eyeballs GMing 2 other campaigns at the moment, so I haven't been able to play this. So what that means is any of my thoughts and opinions and observations are coming from the perspective of someone reading through the book and not actually experiencing it on the table. For any of you who have had an opportunity to play it out as a GM, please share your experiences and your thoughts in the comments below for everybody to benefit from them. So I'll start off with a couple of general thoughts, my likes, dislikes, areas of concern, and that sort of thing. I guess first in the likes column, I very much appreciate that Pray for Death is not a bait and switch. It very much lives up to the promise of you are experiencing life as a group of Red Mantis assassins, and you are going to be committing assassinations, primarily in the first chapter. It does kind of skew into other areas, but the first chapter is almost entirely a major uh, infiltration and assassination mission that feels just right on brand for when you think about the Red Mantis organization. And there's some opportunities to do similar things in the second chapter. In the second half of the adventure, chapters 3 and 4, it does skew a little bit from the act of infiltrations and assassinations and that sort of thing, but is still very much on brand, I would say. This is not a situation like we've had with a couple of other adventure paths where I felt like we were advertised one thing and got something a little bit different. Also, I want to get into the spoilers of it a little bit later, but I will say here that this does intersect with the Godsrain Prophecies, which I don't think is going to be too much of a surprise. Um, this does play into the death of the god Gorum, and no, the players are not the assassins who go kill Gorum, but that event does take place within the confines of this adventure. So I think it's I think it's very cool and very neat how they have constructed this meta plot, and they've done it in such a way that players can intersect with it and feel involved in this major historical event, but not in a way that would seem completely out of place. Like I said, and I'll get into spoilers after the break, but it's handled in a way that they are present for the death of Gorm, and to some degree they can feel tangentially involved, I suppose, but not to a point that would be unbelievable, I guess. Some other thoughts. I guess the big thing that we should talk about is that yes, this is an evil campaign. Even though evil alignments don't exist, the philosophy of being an evil person does still exist in Pathfinder. And this is a game that is intended for evil characters who worship the evil god of assassination, Chakek, and are very highly valued agents of the Red Mantis organization. As I mentioned in the first video, there is some guidance in the book to help you craft this for non-evil players or for people who would rather say that they're mercenaries and not members of the Red Mantis organization. And I think that's that's all well and good as an attempt to be as inclusive as possible. But this is really an adventure that if you're going to run it, my recommendation is you should commit to lawful evil characters who are members of the Red Mantis organization and who very faithfully worship the god Chakek. Um, any deviation from that, I think, dilutes this adventure. That's the perspective that it was written from. That's the way that I would recommend you go about it. And as such, I recommend that this is a self-contained adventure. I imagine behind the scenes there may have been discussions over, like, should we make this an adventure path? Should this be 3 books? Should it be 6 books? And I'm glad that this is only 1 book. I've never played Hell's Vengeance, the evil adventure path for Pathfinder First Edition, but I've heard a lot about all kinds of different problems with it. I myself am not a fan of evil adventures at all. This year marks, as weird as it sounds, this year marks my 40th year playing tabletop role-playing games. And over those years, I've participated in a few different evil-aligned games, and they've all been complete disasters. They've all devolved into players trying to steal from one another, players trying to backstab each other, trying to cheat each other, trying to bully each other. And none of them have lasted more than a couple of sessions, and none of them were fun, and they were all disastrous. So I'm not a fan of evil games to begin with. So I'm glad that they are so far treating the evil game as kind of a niche thing, where for people who want to play an evil game, here's an option for you, but it's a self-contained single adventure and not a larger not a larger AP that you would need to commit to. I also appreciate that they've written this adventure in such a way where you are technically evil, but you don't have to do like crazy diabolical evil things. You don't burn down any orphanages or kick any puppies or or murder anybody who probably didn't have it coming. The people who you battle are largely other evil people. They are largely people that are not entirely nice and good, and it kind of reminds me of that scene in True Lies where Arnold Schwarzenegger has just killed a bunch of people and a bunch of, I guess, terrorists, and Jamie Lee Curtis looks around at all the dead bodies and goes, "Oh my God, you killed all these people." And Arnold Schwarzenegger's reply is, "Yes, but they were all bad." And that's kind of the way I feel about being evil in this campaign. Yes, you are a Red Mantis assassin. Yes, you are evil. Yes, you worship an evil god. But there's nothing in this adventure that they're going to force you to do things that I think would be absolutely morally reprehensible to most players. So I'm not a huge fan of evil campaigns, but I gotta say, if I was to run an evil game, this kind of fits the mold that I would, and really kind of hone in on the lawful aspect of being lawful evil. This is not for people who are pure chaos agents. So this is not for players who want to be, the Joker, or anything like that. You just want to watch the world burn. This is not that kind of evil. Um, so, as usual, when it comes to evil games, your mileage may vary. I'm not a huge fan of evil campaigns, but I feel like this adventure is as close to being something that I would feel comfortable running with my players as anything I've seen. One other note about areas of concern or so forth is I was a little bit disappointed in some of the editing of this book. I don't want to nitpick, but there were more moments where I noticed things like a word missing or the same word repeated or just weird grammatical things in this book. And I don't want to be like the nitpicky guy, but when I see when I see so many instances of that it becomes distracting to me when I'm reading it. It makes me worry that maybe the book was rushed out, and if the book was rushed out, then there could be deeper problems. As I mentioned before, I've not actually played this, I've not actually experienced it, but that was a red flag that I saw when I was going through it. So let's talk about some other things. One of the areas that's interesting with this adventure is it starts at level 14. So if you run it as is and as they recommend it and as I recommend it, you're going to need to have your players all roll up 14th level characters, and FYI, that can take some time, and that can be daunting, especially to new players. So, as a GM, you might want to consider, especially if you have brand new players, creating pregens or asking them, describe your ideal character and let me help you out to whatever degree. And that might even be to you just rolling up all the stats for them. But largely prepare that this is going to take time to make brand new 14th level characters. Also, I mentioned in the first video about some of the things that exist in the book to help you with that. It tells you like this is what the gear should look like, and each of the characters should be picking. They call it an advantage, but it's basically a high level background for some things. But there's a couple more items to mention. First is that the appendix or the back of the book, it includes a revised write up of the Red Mantis assassin archetype. So the dedication feat and everything is there in the book. From my looking at it, I don't think it's really any different from what we previously had. I think one of the Lost Omens books, the World Guide, included the now legacy version of the Red Mantis assassin archetype. I think all they did was just change some of the verbiage to make it compatible with the remaster, and that's all. So what that means is yes, the Red Mantis assassin dedication has one of the, I guess, more infamous requirements in Pathfinder, which is a second level dedication feat, but you must be proficient in Sawtooth Sabers as a requirement, as a prerequisite. And Sawtooth Sabers are advanced weapons. So to get that proficiency by second level is cumbersome. But a couple of things to note. Number one, you absolutely positively do not have to have the Red Mantis Assassin archetype in order to be a member of the Red Mantis Assassin organization. So, like, there's a mechanical side and a story side. The story side is being a member of the Red Mantis Assassin organization just means that you're a member of that organization. There's no requirement that you also have that mechanical dedication. But if you want it, it is present in the book, and one of those requirements that are tricky is getting proficiency for the Sawtooth Saber. You also don't need to take it at second level, but I think a lot of players or a lot of groups will be playing with the free archetype alternate or variable rule, and so that certainly makes this a good option to take as part of that. But in order for you to get that training in Sawtooth Sabers, your options are limited at first level. You can play a fighter. Fighters get training proficiency in all advanced weapons, so that would meet the requirement. Or you could play a cleric of a Chakek, and since the Sawtooth Saber is a Chakek's favored weapon, then those clerics would have proficiency in that weapon. And I think if you are playing a human, you could take the Versal Heritage and spend your that feat on weapon proficiency or weapon training. And as long as your class is a class that gets martial weapon proficiency, then you could pick it up that way as well, I think. Um, but long story short, it's difficult to get it by level 2, and it seems a little odd that it's gated behind an advanced weapon proficiency as opposed to being gated behind something like a stealth proficiency level. Um, because you think about Red Mantis assassins, you think people who are sneaky and stealthy and so forth. But in order to qualify it by second level, you're probably going to be a fighter or something of that sort, and not a sneaky, stealthy rogue. But at any rate, that is the rule. That is something that you need to figure out. Now, if you're okay not taking it by second level, then you got a little more flexibility. Like I said before, if you are a member of a class that has martial weapon proficiency, then you can pick up the weapon proficiency general feat, and that will give you advanced weapon proficiency for one group, which you could use for the Sawtooth Saber. So if you were the Barbarian Champion, Magus, Ranger, Swashbucklers, then you could get it that way. I think you could get it from the Fighter multi-class dedication, and then spend your feat on weapon proficiency. The way that feat works is if you take it, and if you are not trained in all martial weapons, it gives you training in all martial weapons. And if you're already trained in all martial weapons, then it gives you advanced weapon training in one group. So that's what we're doing here. We're trying to find the best way to get you all proficiency with martial weapons, and then your proficiency with the Sawtooth Saber, which might call for having to take that feat twice. Now, outside of that Red Mantis Assassin dedication and archetype, the book also provides a new arcane school for our wizards out there. And so it is a new arcane school for Red Mantis magic. So again, you don't have to be a martial character in this. You don't have to be, a stealthy rogue. You can play as spellcasters, making room for all different kinds of play types, and also including this Red Mantis Arcane School for our wizards out there. So, with those general thoughts out of the way, let's go ahead and dive into the story. And as I mentioned before, there is a lot of story to get through in this adventure. So get comfortable, get your favorite beverage, and let's go ahead and dive into the story. And now this will be your final warning that this is going to be all on spoilers. So your last warning to get out. I guess chronologically speaking, with this story, it begins centuries ago. I don't think the book specifically tells you how many centuries. It says centuries ago. There were two Proteans, and these two Proteans, they were so similar in thinking and their goals and desires that their bodies merged together, but they retained their individual minds and personalities and so forth. And so they're now this one conjoined entity. And they decided that they were meant to rule over the chaotic plane known as the Maelstrom. And in order for them to set themselves as the rulers of the Maelstrom, they need to ascend to godhood. They need to become deities themselves. And in order to do that, they need to redraw the border that goes between the Maelstrom and a part of Elysium called the Clashing Shores that is the personal realm of Gorum, the god of war. So they need to redraw the line of the border so portions of the plane that are currently part of Gorum's territory, the Clashing Shores, would then become part of the Maelstrom. And this is part of the process in them ascending to godhood. In order to do that, they need to remove 999 rift trees that mark the border itself. For the last few years, and again, I don't think it tells you how many years, but for the last few years, it says this Protean, dual-minded Protean entity has been wrapped around the first of these trees and is trying to remove it from Gorum's realm. So that's the first kind of nugget of backstory that you should have in your head. Now, in kind of associated with that is knowing that Achekek, who is the Mantis god of assassination, is also sort of tasked with delivering divine justice. And he views what they're doing as an affront, that they're trying to trick their way into godhood, and this offends him. Now, kind of running parallel to that, we have Gorum, the god of war. Gorum has decided it is time for him to die. He has decided that he no longer wants to exist, and this is a bit of a conundrum for him. He doesn't believe anybody can defeat him in open combat. He doesn't believe he can be defeated on the open fields of battle and war. But he also doesn't want to commit suicide. And he doesn't want it to appear that he has committed suicide. He wants to go out in a blaze of glory, so to speak. He wants that hero's death. So he goes to Calistria, who is the goddess of trickery, amongst some other things. And he asks her, as the goddess of trickery, can you engineer a way for me to die? Because we know it can't be a so-called fair fight. There's got to be something where there's trickery involved in order for him to be defeated and killed. And Calistria says she'd be willing to take on this task on one condition. He has to give up a secret to her. And she asks him to remove his helmet and reveal who or what is underneath the armor of Gorum, god of war. I'm not an expert on lore and history. I think maybe Lore Tour or Mythweavers or one of those lore channels. If they haven't already gotten into this, I hope they do. But if from reading it, feels like that maybe this has been a big mystery since first edition. Of you always see the armor and you see maybe like red eyes through the eye slit, but you don't really know who or what is underneath the armor. So he agrees to reveal to Calistria the answer of that secret. And the answer is nobody is underneath the armor. That there is not a being wearing the armor in the sense that you typically think of as a god that is personified as a human or similar mortal being. Instead, here's the quote. In truth, he is, quote, a container filled with the violent urges of all mental life. So this brings into question over, is he really a god? I don't really know, like in Pathfinder lore, like where the gods came from. I don't think it's like Greek and Roman mythology where you have a lot of unions between gods and births, and you can kind of trace a family tree back to titans or primordials or anything like that. But my reading of this in the book makes it sound like this is bringing into question over whether or not Gorum is in fact a god, if his origin is in fact truly divine. And so Calistria says, okay, I asked you to pay the price. You paid it by giving me your secret. I will engineer a way for you to die. She and Gorum part ways. And then she goes to Achekek. Again, the Mantis god of assassination and person who delivers divine retribution. And she is just like casually lets drop, I guess, that she's uncovered Gorum's secrets. And you're not going to believe this, Achekek, but I don't think he's really a god. there's no person underneath that armor. He's really just a container filled with the violent urges of all mortal life. And this enrages Echekek. Echekek believes that Gorum has been deceiving the rest of the gods, that he's been mocking them by masquerading as one of them when he really isn't. And so now Echekek has a reason to dispatch Gorum. So those are two big pieces of backstory. The two Proteans who have merged into one physical body who are attempting to attain godhood by entering Gorum's personal realm, the Clashing Shore, and carve off part of it to become part of the Maelstrom. And Gorum has asked Calistria to engineer a way for him to die through trickery, and she has let drop to Echekek that Gorum may not actually be a divine god, and knowing full well that Echekek is probably going to want to go assassinate Gorum. Third piece of information is going to be all about Blood Mistress Jakalyn. So this is where our backstory is going to intersect with our players. Blood Mistress Jakalyn is the leader of the Red Mantis organization. She's been the leader for over a century. She is a human, so there has been an ongoing mystery of her. How does she have such longevity? As a human, she should have died of natural causes long ago, but she continues to be a healthy, long-lived human leader of the Red Mantis assassins. So one day, Blood Mistress Jakalyn receives a contract to kill Tar-Baphon, also known as the Whispering Tyrant. This sets off a few red flags for her. She's not sure about how legitimate the contract is. A messenger delivers it to her from an anonymous source requesting it, and that's normal for the Red Mantis organization, for the people behind the contract to be anonymous. But this sets off a lot of red flags in her thinking for a couple of different reasons. Partially, she wonders, is this a suicide mission? Is someone wanting for me to go try to kill Tar-Baphon and die in the process? And also, she's not sure that Tar-Baphon is a legitimate target of assassination. There are certain rules that the Red Mantis organization follows that would determine whether or not a target is legitimate or not. And so if she was to go and defeat him and he was not a legitimate target, then that would be grounds for someone else within the Red Mantis organization to call for her to be removed from her position of leadership. So she's suspicious that somebody within the organization is using this as a way to remove her from power. And she's right to be suspicious, because that is, in fact, what's happening. So she doesn't know who sent the messenger with the contract, but she does decide to find that out by capturing and torturing the hell out of the messenger. And the messenger eventually gives up that the contract came from Razmir, the living god, who lives and rules over the nation of Razmir. So she informs, I think she informs everybody. She goes very public with this information, but she also informs the players, because the players are supposed to be like her A-team. They are her maid agents. There's a tight connection and assumed loyalty between her and this particular team of players, and announces to everybody that she is personally going to travel to Razmir to meet with Razmir and get to the bottom of whether or not this contract in fact came from him, and to see if there's anything else happening in the shadows. So she's leaving the headquarters to do this, and so this basically writes Blood Mistress Jakalyn out of the remainder of this adventure. And so once she is gone, the players receive a contract. Their involvement actually begins uh, with them celebrating the successful assassination of their most recent target. So the adventure proper begins with them celebrating, and you don't actually, as part of this adventure, play through that. It just begins with them, them saying, "Hey, you succeeded in killing whoever was your target, and now you're being visited by a messenger." And this messenger comes bearing a new contract for the players. And this contract for them, this mission that's being assigned to them, I shouldn't say contract because they're not given an option of refusing it, as you might with a contract. This is a mission that's being assigned to them. And they are to assassinate a high priest to Gorum. They are to infiltrate this priest's stronghold, his keep, and kill him. And this mission is assigned to them in secret. They don't know this, but it's coming to them from a member of the Red Mantis High Council, a woman named Savia. And she, Savia, is the main antagonist for this adventure. She is a shadowy figure who is, in fact, trying to dispose of Blood Mistress Jakalyn. She is trying to discredit Jakalyn or have her die in an attempt to assassinate the Whispering Tyrant. And so everything that's going on is kind of part of her machinations. And she has at least succeeded in getting Blood Mistress Jakalyn out of their headquarters for a time as she goes to Razmir. And so now, Savia's next step in her plan to take over is to get rid of Blood Mistress Jakalyn's prized agents. And so she assigns them this mission in secret to go kill this high priest of Gorum. Her hope is that they will be unsuccessful and that they will be killed, that they will all die in their attempt to kill this high priest to Gorum. But even if they succeed, and the adventure assumes they succeed, this is the very first chapter, that she has a backup plan. And that backup plan is to discredit them, to produce falsified evidence that claims that there was never a contract, they were never given this mission, that they were operating completely independently, and that this particular priest was not a legitimate target for the Red Mantis assassins. And with them going into business for their own, that is an unlawful assassination that makes them criminals within the order. And that is what kind of comes out. In the first chapter, they infiltrate this keep, they kill the high priest de Gorum, and then afterwards they find themselves on the run as the rest of the Red Mantis organization is trying to hunt them down for this apparently unlawful assassination. So they've been wrongly convicted of this crime by Savia. So, as was mentioned in the part 1 video, pretty much all of chapter 2 and the start of chapter 3 are about the players uncovering this truth of what's going on and proving their innocence. Once they uncover that Savia is the true traitor in the organization, they can go before the ruling body of the Red Mantis organization at their capital, and there's an influence challenge where they are trying to provide their evidence that they are in fact innocent of these charges. And Savia is not present for that meeting. Although she is a member of the High Council, she's not present for that meeting because she and a portion of other Red Mantis assassins who are very loyal to her have already moved into this grand library. Underneath their headquarters of the Red Mantis organization, there is this grand library, and it spans multiple levels of vast complex underneath the headquarters of the organization. Nobody is allowed into the grand library, or at least this wing of the grand library, without the Blood Mistress's permission. So the only people allowed there are Blood Mistress Jakalyn and people she specifically gives her permission to enter. So Savia has gone down there with her loyal soldiers under the pretense of, oh, Blood Mistress Jakalyn gave us permission to do this. So they're not present for the trial or the meeting with the High Council where the players clear their name. The assassins who are with her likely don't know that she's a traitor. They still believe that the players are a traitor. This news hasn't gotten to them because they have gone into this grand library. And the ruling council of the Red Mantises are very distraught at this realization that Savia is trying to overthrow the Blood Mistress, and we don't know exactly what her plan is, but obviously there's some Machiavellian things going on in the background. We need to get her, but she's gone to a place where we cannot pursue her because none of them are Blood Mistress Jakalyn, and none of them have permission to go into this underground complex. But the requirements for entering this area is either you're the Blood Mistress or you have permission from the Blood Mistress, and it's assumed that the players, as being Blood Mistress Jakalyn's most favored agents within the organization, that she would give them permission. So this is just kind of the way that they write it in a way that the players have this put on their shoulders to save the entire Red Mantis organization, and that all of these super high level and powerful Red Mantis assassins can't be part of this because they don't have permission to enter this underground complex. So that's where in chapter 3 it kind of turns into this sort of dungeon crawl as they explore this underground library as they pursue Savia and her team of Red Mantis assassins. During their exploration there's a very important encounter. They discover an elven woman named Bezamine chained in a cell. And Bezamine was the Blood Mistress who preceded Blood Mistress Jakalyn. It's been long believed that Bezamine is dead, and she died, and then Jakalyn, who was a pupil of hers, replaced her and became and ascended in her place to become the new Blood Mistress. In truth, Blood Mistress Jakalyn had captured her predecessor and has kept her chained in this secret underground complex for over a century. And Bezamine is an elven woman. And Blood Mistress Jakalyn has this unusual longevity that has never been explained. Well, it's explained in the adventure that she has been using a dark magic, a ritual, to siphon the elven longevity off of Bezamine and into herself. So even though she's human, she has the lifespan of an elf, so to speak. So this is creating a moral dilemma for the players. The book says the right thing for them to do, and kind of the action that the adventure assumes they will do, is that they will just close the cell and leave her, because they are loyal to Blood Mistress Jakalyn. I can see this going completely sideways with my players, because my players, they tend to play good aligned characters. They tend to be very heroic. They tend to help victims. And so if they see someone who's been captured and chained to a wall or whatever, they're going to want to either free that person, or they are going to want to do as she requests and kill her. And they may be playing characters who have this fierce loyalty to Jakalyn, but they as players have never met Jakalyn. This adventure begins after Jakalyn's already left, and so all I would tell them is, you're really loyal to the Blood Mistress, and she's left to go to Razmiran. But there hasn't actually been gameplay to organically build that loyalty so that they really truly feel a connection to Blood Mistress Jakalyn. So I can see this going sideways. The book does recommend that if you have these concerns, then don't even put Besamine in this adventure. That her placement in this adventure is to answer the long secret of how has Jakalyn lived for as long as she has. Apparently, I don't know a lot of the lore of the Red Mantis Order, but apparently this is one of the big questions that's been asked, I guess, since first edition. If my players don't know that this is a grand mystery or whatever, I probably wouldn't even introduce this for fear of the complications it might bring. But if you have players who you don't think this will be a major moral dilemma or cause problems, then you could certainly run it as it is written. But this is just an area where I would advise caution. I know with my players, I would not introduce Besamine in this to the game. I think this would also risk them turning on Blood Mistress Jakalyn because they would say, well, Blood Mistress Jakalyn was never the rightful leader of this organization. Besamine, although she's been chained underground for 100 years, she is our rightful leader, and have their loyalties completely go up in air. Maybe even say, Savia might be right. Maybe Savia is correct in what she is doing. So, and there is some guidance in the book and a sidebar for what to do if players feel that way as well. So this brings us to the point in the first video where I stopped that overview. The players navigate the rest of the way through this dungeon, basically, that is the library beneath the stronghold of the Red Mantis Assassins, where they discover a magical portal is opened. They cross through it, and as I think I said in the first video, it takes them to a place far, far away and more bizarre than the Red Mantis headquarters that they've been in. And that location is the Clashing Shores, which is Gorum's personal realm within Elysium. So they leave the universe of the material plane, or whatever you want to call it, and they enter the eternal battlefields of Gorum, the god of war, in their pursuit of Savia. So this is where a lot of the things I said at the beginning of the backstory portion begin to start to intersect. Savia is aware that the dual conjoined protean being is attempting to achieve godhood by redrawing the borders between Gorum's realm of the Clashing Shores and the Maelstrom. She's aware that's happening. She is aware that Chakek it knows this, and she believes that Chakek is going to assassinate this protean being in retribution for this affront to divinity that is trying to sort of, quote, trick its way into becoming a god. And the reason why she's doing this is she wants to have a meeting with Chakek where she can plead her case to him directly and say Blood Mistress Jakalyn is a fraud. She shouldn't be leading the Red Mantis organization. One of the rules of the Red Mantis Assassins is you do not assassinate another member of the Red Mantises. So if you want to dispose of someone in the leadership above you, you either have to concoct, I guess, a third party to manage these things, or you need to get permission, and that's what she wants to do. She, it's like in Back to the Future. Like, how do you know where and when a bolt of lightning is going to strike? In this case, it's, I want to meet with my god, but how do you know where and when my god is going to appear? Well, she's got it figured out that Chakek is going to make his appearance within Gorum's realm to slay this protean. And she'll be there, and after he does so, she'll get his attention and say, hey, God, you need to listen to me. Blood Mistress Jakalyn, she's no good. I need to dispose her. I need your support and your permission to do so. So, when the players arrive, they arrive on the shores of this beach to like this endless body of water, and they see Gorum in the far, far, far distance. Gorum, it says, stands taller than the tallest mountain. And so you can see him, think flat Earth style, for an unknown told of miles or dozens of miles or hundreds of miles or whatever it is. He just looms over everything. And he's got his sword out and he's swinging and he's engaged in a battle. But I don't think this adventure ever reveals who or what he's battling. The players can't make out who his opponent is. My guess is this is something that's explored either in the novel for Godsrain's Prophecy or one of the adventure paths. It's going to be probably revealed in one of the other connected pieces of this big meta story. But they can see him, and giant is an understatement. Just massive, and he's so far away, standing in this ocean, battling something. But even though he's so far away, he does begin to notice their presence. And during the fight, he turns his gaze on the players. And the way this kind of plays out is while they're pursuing Savia by going on the border of this beach to the ocean, there's a number of different encounters and events that fall in order, and between certain encounters, there's these moments where Gorum notices them and turns his attention on them and casts his gaze on them. I mean, specifically on the players. And they have to make will saves to avoid suffering mental damage and suffering fear effects and becoming enfeebled. And whichever member of the party, in a very nice twist, whichever member of the players dealt the killing blow to the Priest of Gorum back in Chapter 1 of the adventure, that player suffers a -4 to their saves, because Gorum is really interested in that player. And it also creates this vibe of, if Gorum wasn't occupied in whatever giant god battle he's in right now, he would smite the hell out of the players. They are an intrusion in his realm. And it's an affront to him that, they assassinated one of his high priests, and how dare they enter his realm. So the players have to contend with that while they're also dealing with these other encounters that pop up in the area, one of which is really neat. When you are a follower of Gorum and you die, you go to this realm to live out the glories of battle for all eternity. So the priest who they assassinated in Chapter 1, he now resides in this realm, and they get to encounter him again in a battle where he's also accompanied by a dragon who is one of Gorum's most steadfast followers as well in this sort of epic rematch battle. And eventually, the players arrive at an area called the Edge of Chaos. And the Edge of Chaos is the location of the Rift Tree where this Protean dual being is attempting to absorb it, destroy it, remove it. And that's kind of the end of the trail for Savia. Savia is also present, but she is hidden so that neither the players nor the Protean can detect her. She's already had a confrontation with the Protean, and the Protean said, look, go away, little mortal. We're busy. And she happily does so because she's really just waiting for a Chakek to arrive and kill the Proteans. When the players arrive, this can play out a number of different ways. They can engage the Proteans in conversation. They can, if they do really great on diplomacy checks and so forth, they can convince the Protean to give up what they're doing and leave. Or most likely, they're going to anger the Proteans, and the Proteans will stop their work trying to destroy the Rift Tree to instead engage the players in combat. And whether they convince the Proteans to leave or they kill the Protean in combat, either way, after that, Savia makes her appearance and she is enraged because they have undone not only her plan, but in her mind, she has undone a Chakek's plan. A Chakek wanted to assassinate the Proteans, And the players, whether or not they know that that is a part of a Chakek's goals, um, Savia believes that they have committed this, heresy by interfering with a Chakek. And she's also now mad that because the Proteans are dead, a Chakek's probably not going to come here and assassinate the 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 Proteans, and therefore she's all of her plans and machinations that led up to her being at the right place at the right time to treat with a Chakek are all going to be undone. So at this point, it's likely that the players are going to battle Savia. So Savia has been the antagonist for the entire story. She is the person who had them falsely accused of crimes at the end of chapter 1. So this is their moment to get their vengeance and kill Savia. Sort of the adventure assumes that there's a grand battle. They do that. They've killed the big bad evil guy. And at that point, the players may be thinking, well, this was an exciting adventure, and we killed the bad guy. We did what was requested of us, of the leaders of our Red Mantis organization, and roll credits were done. Not so fast. Because as soon as that battle is over, apparently Gorum's battle with whatever or whoever he was fighting is now over, and Gorum turns his full attention on the players. And so you can imagine this being that is taller than the tallest mountain that you can see from untold miles away. And the book makes it clear, this is not a vision of Gorum. This is not an avatar of Gorum. This is literally Gorum. He turns on the players, locks his eyes on them, and starts charging. And again, like I said, like if you think like flat Earth where you can see, there's no curvature, you can see forever, and he's however many miles tall, is charging at them with his sword ready to deliver a killing blow. And just as Gorum nears to deliver that final blow and kill the players, a Chakek appears from behind him and stabs through his body, rends him, rips him in half, kills Gorum, the god of war. Alright, so my battery in the camera ran out of power at the dramatically appropriate moment. It died right as I was telling you about Gorum dying. It's now a couple hours later, and I'm going to try to wrap this up. I warned you at the beginning that this was going to be a long one. There's a lot of story in this adventure. So yes, with the players providing, I assume, a distraction of sorts for Gorum, it allows a Chakek to manifest behind the god of war and kill him. And once he dies, so does the Clashing Shores. So the Clashing Shores is his personal realm within Elysium, and it's tied to him. So with no Gorum, that means there's not going to be a Clashing Shores. So once he dies in a dramatic explosion, the realm, the plane around them of the Clashing Shores starts falling apart as well, and the players need to escape, or hopefully escape with their lives. So this sets off a series of disasters, hazards that they need to overcome with skill checks. And these are, I believe the book literally calls these end of the world disasters, a series of end of the world disasters. And by end of the world, we're talking level 25 hazards that they need to roll DC 50 skill checks to overcome. Now, they do get a little bit of a boost because once the god of war dies, a bit of his divine essence kind of infuses things in the area, and this gives the players a little bit of a divine buff to help them overcome these challenges, but still a very a very dramatic scene, and if they don't score enough points during their escape, enough victory points, then yeah, they die, or they fall into the abyss, never to be seen again. I forget exactly how the book words it. But if they survive and they return back to the universe, back to what used to be the material plane, they are greeted by Blood Mistress Jakalyn, and depending on the choices they made, her temperament may be a little different, but assuming they remained loyal to her throughout all of this, she thanks them and rewards them for uh, preventing Savia from achieving her goals of deposing their Blood Mistress Jakalyn, and that's pretty much where the curtain closes on this epic event with this, truly epic finale of witnessing a god die. So that's the story, and those are all of the spoiler bits that were omitted from the first video. So we still have a couple of questions. I know this is getting long, so I'm going to try to wrap this up relatively succinctly. There are a couple of questions that were asked on the original video comments I haven't gone to yet. The first is, how does this adventure's use of the infiltration system compare to other adventures that use the infiltration system? And the infiltration system is just a variation on the victory point subsystem. You can find more about it in the GM Core book for the remaster edition. And this adventure, the only real difference is just in the scope of it. So adventures that have used the infiltration system previously, I think about things like in Sky King's Tomb. There is a scene in the second book where the players are infiltrating a cult, and they have to make their skill checks, and depending on how many points they get, impacts to what degree, if any, they are detected in their infiltration into this cult. And it is pretty much by the numbers, more or less. And it's like 1 or 2 pages. And it's one piece of a larger puzzle for that chapter of the adventure. And that's typical. That's typical. There's nothing wrong with that at all. That serves the purpose. But in contrast, in Pray for Death, just preparing for the infiltration is 4 pages compared to the 1 or maybe 2 for the entire infiltration in that part of Sky King's Tomb. And so it's really taking it and just fleshing it out. And whereas, like in other adventures where the infiltration system is used as a stepping stone for one piece of a chapter of an adventure, the infiltration and exploration and assassination and exiting, all that combined, is pretty much the first chapter of this adventure. So it goes into greater detail, and part of that means is providing things like new preparation activities. Pray for Death provides 7 new preparation activities that players can do before they even begin the infiltration. It's staking out the place that they're going to infiltrate. It's uncovering secrets about the stronghold, and if they succeed in that, they might find out that there's a key in a nearby warehouse that they can break into that warehouse and steal the spare key that they can then use to open a locked door during the infiltration. It provides mechanics for a lot of things that I think might typically be either overlooked, or you just gotta, as a GM, shoot from the hip if a player wants to stake out a place that they're infiltrating and so forth. This gives you mechanical rules that go along with those preparation steps. And there's a lot of it that I think GMs are going to be able to take out and apply to other adventures that have the theme of infiltration or sneaking into a compound or whatnot. You're definitely going to have to do some work on the details to make it fit, but you can certainly look at this and see a framework that you can apply to other adventures. It also gives you like 7 to 8 pages that are on uh, the preparations and just getting into the compound is like 7 to 8 pages total, and that's giving you these little blocks that are called complications. And there's like 5 new complications that tell you things like, what are the skill checks to hide a body, and uses awareness points along with this infiltration system to gauge how much you have alerted the people within the stronghold. So the question of how does it differ? It really differs because it is much more fleshed out. There's much more detail. It plays a more prominent role in this adventure than I am used to seeing in some of the other adventures. And a lot of it you really can. I believe you'll be able to pull out, change some of the DCs to be more level appropriate, change some of the details, and apply to other games that you run. I would say of all of the adventure, yes, the climax at the end is very exciting, but I think as far as GMing, I would be most excited about running that first chapter in the Assassin's Creed type vibe of infiltrating and doing the assassination and getting out. So I think that's all plus the ways in which it differs from what we've seen before. The other question is the same question we always get. What would you recommend that they run before, and what would you recommend that they run after the standalone adventure? My first thought is I think this works perfect as a standalone. I probably wouldn't do a whole lot of work in leaning into it, and I have no idea what to run after. It would just depend on if the players survive and to what degree they would be exciting about continuing the adventures of these now really high level assassins, and depending on how it plays out, like one or more of them could be offered seats on the High Council. I mean, Savia's seat is now open. Somebody needs to take it. There's a lot you could kind of play with, but thinking about what to run before, my first thought is the adventure proper opens with the players celebrating their last successful assassination mission. So I think I would probably run, if anything, I would run a one-shot that, let's play that mission. Let's not just start with you celebrating it. Let's actually start with you playing it. So either that's going to be homebrewing something or finding something from somewhere else you can adapt. Whenever it comes to like adapting a one-shot, I'm kind of a big fan of this series of mini dungeon tomes. Adventure a Week, I believe, creates these, and they've done 2 mini dungeon tome 1 and 2 that are adapted for Pathfinder 2nd Edition. And there is a level 13/14 one-shot in here that is called I Am Not Your Element. And what it is otherworldly energy. A wave of otherworldly energy has struck through the Darklands, or the Underdark, if you're more familiar with D&D terminology. That has crashed into like an underground fault line and deliver like catastrophic damage to a portion of it, including a fire giant monastery that's on a cliff overlooking a sea of lava. And the adventure doesn't really kind of say, well, what are the players doing down there or why. I think it's largely designed just kind of like plug into what you need. Everybody in the monastery is killed except for the high priestess that ruled over the monastery. She survives. So what I would do is I would probably take that and say that some party that wanted this leader of the fire giants down there dead is what caused this otherworldly wave of energy to strike the fault line and destroy the monastery down there. And then through whatever means, divination magic or what have you, they learn, well, wait a second, we killed everybody except the one person we wanted to kill, and there's no way we're going to be able to journey down there and finish her off now, especially since she's kind of holed up in the center of the remaining building. So they contact the Red Mantis assassins, are all like, hey, we need this fire giant assassinated, and you need to send your best agents who can deal with travel in the Darklands and deal with severe hazards such as fire giants, get into that monastery and kill her. So I would that's the way I would probably start it. I would take this one shot that's already published in the mini dungeon tome and just say that this is a contract, this is a job that's been given to the players to go underground and infiltrate a fire giant monastery overlooking the Sea of Lava and assassinate the high priestess down there who was not part or who was not killed in the initial attack from whoever was responsible and whoever is paying the Red Mantis organization for this service. That's one thought. Another thought is the Dark Archive has a series of mini adventures in it. And I'm not a fan of that at all. I'm not a fan of having player-facing material and GM-facing adventures in the same book, but regardless, they are there. So if you wanted to, there is an adventure in there that's 3rd level, 5th level, 6th, 7th, 8th, 9th, 10th, and 12th. This might be a good option for people who don't want to make 14th level characters off the bat. You could start by making the 3rd level characters and running that adventure, and then skip ahead to either 5th or 6th or 7th or however far you want to, run that one, and then kind of use this as stairs to getting to 14th level. You might be able to incorporate meeting the Red Mantis organization somehow, and that may work into and incorporate them being welcomed into the Order of Assassins, and kind of just use those as stepping stones because they are brief adventures. That might be an option if you don't want to go straight from 0 to 14th. Me personally, I think I would go from either 0 to 14 or 0 to 13 and just run like this one-shot adventure to explain what the assassination mission that they were successful in at the beginning. And to me, that would be more rewarding than just saying, hey, you're all celebrating your latest success. We don't know what that is, but you did something good and you're celebrating. So that's it. That's going to be my GM overview part 2 for the Pray for Death adventure that ties into the Godsrain Prophecy and the whole meta narrative that transcends adventures, adventure paths. There's a novel and all kinds of other fun stuff. If you have any questions about this, please leave those in the comments below. If you have any experience with this adventure, please share your experience in the comments below. Let everybody know how things went for you, what challenges you faced, and how you overcame them. And as always, I want to take a brief moment to say thank you to all the people out there who support me and this channel, whether that's by clicking the like button, subscribing to the channel, subscribing to the Patreon, or buying a super thanks. I greatly appreciate everything you do to support me. And with that, thanks for watching, take care, and happy gaming.